So then the Brewers come calling after your senior year. You kind of climb your way through that organization. And the one thing I have a collection of minor league baseball cards, and I try to get as many as I can. I have 2 of your 4 complete sets. Now I'm going to go out and get the other 2 at some point. But when you and I are on the phone, you start telling some great stories about some of these guys that you played with. So I thought it'd be kind of fun too. And I'll flip the cards out.
Sure.
And we look at it. You're not getting away from here without signing your cards for me. But we're going to go through the 1979 Vancouver Canadians. Now, first off, I've been to Vancouver. Vancouver and Victoria are 2 of the most beautiful places I've ever been.
Yes.
So if the Vancouver Travel Commission wants to take care of me on my next trip, my wife would love to go there too.
Oh, I'm sure they probably will. With these cards right here, you can probably go anywhere.
Right? You and me, we'll take our wives.
I'm with you.
All right, so Vancouver Canadians, starting left fielder, Marshall Edwards. Tell me a little bit about Marshall. You told me a great story about when he got the call up to the big leagues. We can jump now. We can jump now because we're going to tell stories about these guys. But Marshall Edwards was a 4th outfielder in the big leagues.
Right.
Speedy guy, but he was on your 1979 Vancouver Canadians club. Tell me a little bit about Marshall Edwards.
Well, one of the best humans ever. He was he could fly. And he batted leadoff and I batted second. And he stole a whole bunch of bases. He gets called up and he comes over to my locker and says, "Bill, it should be you."
Now, why did you say it could be you?
Because I protected him while he stole all his bases.
You wouldn't swing the bat, you loved to steal bases.
Yeah, I could do that. I didn't strike out much.
Okay. Yeah.
So anyway, that's the kind of guy Marshall was. I said, "Marshall, you get up there and steal some bases."
Okay.
You know, he was cool. He had some brothers that played too, which all the Edwards boys were really.
Is he Dave and Mike Edwards' brother?
Dave was one of them.
The Padres outfielder? Yeah, Mike Edwards is the ace.
Yeah.
Okay.
Unbelievably great guy.
Yeah, great. Yeah, I'll see. Okay, so back when you played, a lot of times the minor leagues would be used for guys that had already been in the big leagues that just wanted to keep playing and probably didn't have a chance to come back.
Right.
This guy, Vic Harris, had been in the big leagues with the Giants. Now, if you don't have any stories about him, you know, sorry to that player, but, you know, it is what it is.
No, Vic Harris was nicknamed Slow-Mo.
Okay.
Everything Vic did was like slow.
Yeah.
He would just do it. The game slowed down.
Yeah.
Vic was slow and he was anything but slow.
Okay.
Funniest story I ever saw of Vic Harris was one of our guys, friends named Doug Schaefer. Stop me if I'm telling too many stories.
No. We're going to keep all these.
Doug Schaefer pitched for us at Oklahoma. AAA against the Giants. Dennis Littlejohn's catching, and Schaefer wants to throw me this slider that he thinks is working, and it's not working. And Littlejohn is yelling at him to quit trying to throw that dadgum slider. Yeah. And this is pitcher and batter talking while I'm batting. Okay, and so finally, Schaefer's looking, and he's looking at me, and I'm looking at him, and we're college teammates, and I'm going, hang that thing again. Yeah. And we're in Phoenix at their municipal park. That's a huge park in AAA. Yep. I said, throw it again. I almost joined in the conversation. I said, Fofi, give me that slider again. You know, it's Bull Durham is what it is, you know. And so finally, Little John goes, "You ain't got a slider, Fofi. You ain't got it. It ain't working. You haven't thrown it for a strike in the last hour." Umpire's going, "Come on, guys, let's go." And I'm going, "Yeah, throw something, for God's sake." So he goes, "Okay, here it comes, that hanging freaking slider." And so he leaves it up, and I hit a triple off this center field wall, and I'm standing on third, and they are chewing each other out. It's the funniest thing I've ever seen. Well, Vic Harris, Slow-Mo's up next. They're still arguing. And so he bounces one in the dirt, Doug does, the next pitch, and he bounces in the dirt, and Little John was a bear. Yeah. He was a bear. And he is so mad with Fofi because he won't throw this pitch he wants him to throw. He rears back to fire the ball at Fofi, the pitcher, hits Vic in the back of his head. Vic's just standing there. Because Vic's slow-mo. Vic ain't going to get out of the way of nothing. So he's standing in the box. It hits Vic Harris on the back of the head, bounces all the way to the fence. I score.
Oh, boy.
I score, and Rocky Bridges pulls both of them out of the game, says, "Both of you get out of here." And the last thing we heard from those two was the banging of the lockers, you know, going up the deal. So, anyway.
So it's interesting about Dennis Littlejohn. I used to go to Royal Spring Training in Fort Myers. And one of the great things about spring training, especially back when I would go, is you would be able to meet so many players. And Littlejohn was a non-roster guy with the Royals after he played in the big leagues with the Giants. And I remember meeting him and getting his autograph. And he was a moose. He was a big guy. All right, so we're moving on to the outfield. We're going to get to your card a little bit, but Creighton Tevlin, lefty hitter. Tell me about Creighton.
Really super ball player from Southern Cal. In the World Series where Winfield beat us 1-0, they were beating Southern Cal 6-1 or 7-1. You can check this out. And they pull Winfield. Winfield's pitching against Southern Cal. They pull him to save him for the finals. And Southern Cal gets 9 hits in a row, I think, which made today be the most hits in a row. And Creighton got the 9th hit to beat Minnesota and send them home from the World Series with Winfield having been pulled.
Wow.
So it ain't over till it's over.
That's right.
And Creighton was a great. He played center field too, so a lot of times I played right where he played center.
And much like you, was a guy that always had good minor league numbers, but never got that chance.
Right.
Okay, now we got a couple utility infielders. I think that this was your third baseman. I think it went Juan Lopez was at third, but also played some short and second.
Right.
Maybe had a couple little cups of coffee in the big leagues. You remember much about one.
Okay.
Also, if you wouldn't mind, kind of talking a little bit about. You went to Oklahoma, where mostly guys from Oklahoma. You get to pro ball, and now you have Latin teammates, Southern California teammates. It's much more now than it was when you played. But with playing with guys like Juan Lopez and those type, talk about that a little bit as well.
Well, the first thing I ever remember about Juan Lopez was his nickname was Yonky, and so they would call him Yonky the Little Monkey because he could play everywhere. And the other thing I remember is Frank Howard got mad at him for not running a ball out one day in spring training. And he picked Juan up and hung him on a coat rack, and it cost Frank Howard some money for hanging Juan. Juan was one of those guys that was a veteran in AAA, had been there too long, wasn't ever going to go. But if you had to call him to the big leagues for a day, he could play.
Yeah.
Good.
All right. Well, I think playing in Milwaukee as an infielder with Paul Molitor, who got injured all the time, Robin Yount.
Juan could play anyway.
But you have Gantner, Yount, and Molitor. Unless they're hurt, you're not getting called up.
No.
And same with you as an outfielder.
No.
Pretty stacked outfield in Milwaukee. Yeah. Okay. Ed Romero, who actually ended up making it to the big leagues after this year, and had 3 or 4 years in the big leagues as a backup infielder.
Eddie was batting the day I tore the ligaments in my leg.
Okay.
I'm on first base, and we would always do a hit and run. And he would put the ball right behind me, and I would just go to third. Well, for some unknown reason, I don't know this today, I did not check him. Okay, I take off. We've done it so many times. I didn't check him. On hit and run, you check the hitter.
Right.
I did not. And he popped the ball up for the first time ever. And so the shortstop, second baseman come across. I look up to see where the ball is because now I know I'm screwed. I haven't done what I'm supposed to do. And my foot hits the bag and comes over like this, and my foot went right over the top, and I crushed all my ligaments in my ankle. This is the day I get called up. I get called up the next day from Ray Poitevin. He says, "You're coming to the big leagues if you can run." So I was in a cast for 12 weeks. But Eddie was a great player. Super.
Was that 1979?
79, yeah.
Okay.
Eddie was a great handler of the bat, really good defensive ball player.
Now we got Len Cicada, who's from Seattle, Washington. Obviously was with the Orioles with Cal Ripken. Played in a couple World Series with them. Tell me a little about Lenny.
Well, Lenny, we called him the Cat, Cicada. Probably the best hands of anybody ever played the game. I mean, really. So I'm playing right field a lot of the time over there, and Tony Muser's playing first, and Lenny Cicada's playing second. If something got through to me in right field, it was a rocket because those two guys picked everything.
Got everything.
Muser got everything, and Lenny was by far and away the fastest kid I've ever seen.
Your first baseman this year is actually kind of near and dear to Ratowski and I because he's a Schaum North alum. I've never met the guy. I would love to do the same thing with Skip at some point. But Skip James, Schaum North, played in the big leagues 2 years with the Giants. I think this might have been, 79 might have been the last year of his professional career.
Yes.
Tell me about Skip and tell me why a guy like Skip, maybe in today's game with more teams, more players, gets maybe a better opportunity. He always put up good numbers in the minors. But at first base in San Francisco, you have Willie McCovey late in his life, you have Mike Ivey. Not going to happen. He goes to Milwaukee, and you guys have Cecil Cooper at first base. Not going to happen.
Well, if Skip James is at first, if Tony Muser is at first, if Lenny Cicada is at second, the right fielder, it's not going to get much action unless it's in the air. I don't remember Skip ever making an error or a mistake. I mean, and that's just it. Once you get to this level, when I talk a lot about the Sandlot, which is obviously with the stuff that I've done, this is such a tough game. And when you get to these guys where you're playing with the Skip James of the world and those guys, they never make a mistake. You don't make a mistake. I mean, you go from a game that is very hard to not make when you're little to the game is very tough. Skip, Skip and myself and Jamie Quirk, we batted second, third, and fourth in the lineup. We were all left-hand hitters. We were all blonde, blue-eyed guys. And I would be at the plate, and they would say, "Come on, Skip." I'd hear a fan.
Yeah.
You know, "Come on, Skip," or "Come on, Jamie," or whatever. So just guys that went to work every day and just didn't. Their glove work was insane. You want them in the game late innings for sure.
Moving on to a guy that everybody in Kansas City knows will be in the Royals Hall of Fame. You know, maybe get a statue someday. Your catcher, Ned Yost. This is before he had made the big leagues. I believe he made his big league debut in 1980, but the year before, he's your AAA catcher.
Yes. Well, Ned and I have been great friends. We're gonna go to spring training next week. My oldest son is buying our tickets. We had an apartment in the same place with Ned and Deborah, and Matthew was born, my oldest, in Vancouver. And so Matthew called me last week, and he says, "Father, what are you doing on February 22nd?" And I said, "Well, I'm playing in a racquetball tournament. I have a speaking engagement at a church." And he goes, "No, and no." I said, "What am I doing February 22nd?" He goes, "I just bought our tickets to spring training." He goes, "We got to go see Ned on my 40th birthday," which is in June. I said, so I texted Ned and I said, "Hey, you want to feel old?" I said, "Matthew's taking me to camp."
Wow.
So he said, "Let's go to dinner. We'll go to dinner." I guess they're playing their first games on that weekend.
Sure.
And so, we're going to go to dinner. But Ned was the epitome of nails behind the plate. I mean, he was a leader. I mean, he's the leader of the Royals. He's the guy that got us to the World Series and we won. And I don't think there's anybody as special as he is, as far as he loves these young guys. He loves them. That was in the day when you could block home plate.
Yeah.
And you didn't get a free pass to come to home plate.
Ned, but I remember I was a catcher. I was a catcher, my dad used to have me. I was an outfielder and a catcher. I played all over the place, but my dad used to have me watch certain catchers play the game. And I remember Ned Yost being a guy that caught his eye. Mike Sosha was the other one who was just a beast blocking balls behind the plate. But what do you think it is about catchers that have made so many of them into successful career baseball people, whether it be a coach or a manager? What is it about catchers you think specifically?
Well, obviously, and it's probably a lot of people say this, but they're the only one that's looking out and they see the whole game. They're responsible for so much. They're responsible for the pitcher and the setting of the defenses and the knowing the hitters and the pitches and getting all that. They're just responsible their whole lives for blocking every pitch, not letting anything get by. So not only letting it get by physically, but they can't let anything else get by out there. You know what I mean? And they're fighters. They'll just fight you. And now I always thought was true, whether they're 7 years old. And I wrote in my first book, I said, it's always great to see your catcher show up. Even though he's 7, he knows why he's there. So it's something that they have inside of them that's innate, to what they do.
I'm advising the catcher of Missouri State, Andrew Millis, who's ranked the 3rd best college catcher in the country, behind Adley Rutschman, who's probably going to be the 1st overall pick. But Drew is the type of guy, and I love watching catchers when I scout. Drew is the type of guy that he's a switch hitter. He was a great quarterback in high school. He's athletic, but he's also a leader, and he's a strong Christian. He's very consistent. One thing I will say, in my little philosophy on great athletes, great leaders, great people in life, it took me a little bit while longer to kind of figure this out, but I think people that are consistent in life tend to make it far. And I think a lot of catchers, you have to be very consistent in your routine because your success is going to help out your pitcher. A great catcher can make a pitcher so much better. I always challenge scouting directors. If I was running a minor league organization, I would go find the best defensive catchers in the country. I don't care if they hit 100, and I have them catch my big arms until they get past AA, and then promise that guy a job as a scout or whatever. But I see so many guys having to become catchers. Not enough American kids catch. Drew and Ned obviously as catchers. A lot of Latin kids catch because they know it's a great ticket to a better life. But if you're a coach and you got a kid that wants to catch, my dad, before my first Little League practice with this team, he said, "Greg, you're going to be a shortstop and you're going to be a center fielder." And I'm a pretty stubborn guy. Anybody will tell you that. My dad was my hero, but the first practice he said, "Well, we don't have a catcher. Who wants to catch?" boom, my hand's up. I love the position. It's a great position. I think that one of the reasons why I become such a baseball guy is because I appreciated what everybody else was doing on the field. All right, so we're moving on here, and if it's okay, we're going to go through this team. We'll take a break, and then we're going to come back because I got something kind of cool I want to share with you. Okay. So Craig Ryan was a guy that had big time minor league numbers, and we go back to. So one thing we're dealing with in Major League Baseball right now, Billy, is we have two of the biggest names in baseball that are still free agents. We have over 100 Major League guys that are free agents, but even bigger than that is we have like 250 minor league free agents. It seems like in the last couple years, guys that are over the age of 28, if they have not made their mark in the minors, they're getting no opportunities to come back. Non-roster invitees in spring training are at an all-time low, okay? But when I've talked to guys that I've represented that are minor league free agents, you've got to make your way from 22 to 26. You got to put up numbers. And even if you do put up numbers, you are going to be a guy that if you're on the outside, there's a 22 or 23-year-old guy that can do your job. It's really tough. And I equate it to the 60s, 70s when there's less teams. And I remember specifically talking about Craig Ryan. Craig Ryan and another guy named Dave Lindsley hit like, I think they combined for 60 home runs in Double-A, which is huge numbers. 2 years later, they're out of baseball. So whether it was they weren't making enough money and they took a job somewhere else, I don't know what the story is behind that. But your leash, I mean, you left your career. I know this is how you ended your career, and we'll get to that. But a guy like this, I don't believe he was injured. He just didn't have a job anymore. So talk a little bit about Craig Ryan.
Well, his nickname was Big Dog, and for a couple of years mine was a Mad Dog, so he would call me Mad Doggy, and he was the Big Dog, and he played right field. He could crush the baseball. He wasn't very fast, and it seemed like to me that a lot of the guys that could crush the baseball at times got kind of stereotyped. As to, I saw a lot of guys in AAA that could crush it, and they just couldn't run much, and maybe their defense wasn't right. Definitely to have Skip James or Tony Muser type defense at first base was essential, and they didn't quite have that. It's kind of like me. I could hit 6, 7, 8 home runs. I couldn't hit 30. And Frank Howard said, if you can't hit 25, don't try and hit a 1. So it's what makes you that marginal player. It's what makes you that guy that could play but's not, because you're not everything. You're good enough. You're hitting 329, but you've only hit 6 home runs. Gorman Thomas hit 6 home runs in a week. So it's. And
he can play some center field.
We can play some center field. Yeah. So you get when you get to all the way to the top, the guys are more complete. They don't make any mistakes. I mean, who's the catcher for the Dodgers? Grandel. That had a bad game. And then he's labeled like he's no good.
On a national TV.
He makes 1 or 2 mistakes in all this. So that's the pressure. But Craig was an amazing hitter. A lot of times where I would be standing on first base or second base, and the guy would throw him the wrong pitch, and all I had to do was just walk in. I could walk in backwards.
It's one thing when we do look at minor league stats, sometimes we do forget that oftentimes these fields are in high, elevation and in smaller ballparks. The California League's known for that. What was Vancouver's park like?
Vancouver was a horrible place to play. It was damp, cold, all the time damp. And you could your best shot was you couldn't get it out. Not unusual for me, but anyway, it was.
You had a pitcher, and we'll get to him a little bit, that won 22 games, which is amazing for a minor league pitcher. I got to think a pitcher wanted to throw in Vancouver.
You want to throw in Vancouver? Well, and in the Eastern League up north where it's so cold. We played some cold places, Spokane, Washington, and Tacoma, and all those places, and rainy, a lot of rain, a lot of humidity.
Good coffee though, right?
Heavy. Yeah, I wasn't as much of a coffee drinker back then.
Yeah, okay, all right. We were going to try to get another, I was trying to get another plug for somebody to get some more.
There you go.
Your manager ends up becoming a big league manager down the road, John Felsky. Tell me about John.
He was from Philadelphia. Okay. As tough as they come.
Managed the Phillies, I believe.
Yeah, tough as they come. I loved John Felsky. He was a great manager. He was a guy that he believed in me, and when a guy believes in you, you just do it. But he was really old school as far as that. I had seen him so physically strong that I had seen him actually pull the guard railing. The guard railings are usually pretty, and they're pretty good in a ballpark. and I had seen him bend those. You know, he was very strong.
Did he have your back? I mean, Ned Yost, one thing about Ned is I've noticed his managerial style is he always has his players' back.
Yeah.
Do you think that Felske's a guy that maybe he learned from? I mean, I would have to think that
Probably
even at that point.
Felske was a catcher.
Yeah.
John was a catcher.
Right.
Yeah, John. But John was one of those guys. I'll never forget one night. We got into a John match with Montreal's AA team. Gantner, Jimmy's playing third, and we're John with the Expos. They were in not Trois-Rivières, Canada, but they were in somewhere, Quebec.
Quebec. Okay.
So they're coming in, and we're John with them. And so all of a sudden, in the middle of the game, John invites all of us into the dugout, into the locker room. So our whole team goes into the locker room. And he proceeds to tell us that either beat them, I'll take out all the words that he used because there's not a one of them good for a
We don't want a sponsorship from you.
Yeah, he tells all of us to either go in and beat them or fight them.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Jimmy Gantner heard fight them.
Yes.
Okay, so Andy Dies comes around third. Andy Dies looked like he'd swallowed bowling balls in his shoulders. Andy Dies, Creighton Tevlin, I was at center one night. Creighton Tevlin's in left. Andy Dies hits a ball out of Pittsfield, Massachusetts. He hit it out of Pittsfield, Massachusetts. Creighton didn't move. I didn't move. I look over at Creighton and I go, "What's the farthest ball you've ever seen hit?" You know, while Andy's still running around the bases.
Right.
And Creighton goes, "That one?"
Wow.
I said, "Yeah." So anyway, Dies hits a triple. And he comes around third. And he comes sliding in. And Jimmy Gantner heard the word fight. And so he comes in head first, Andy did. And Gantner hits him. This was not a tag. It was a punch from about here with the ball right on top of his head. So the fight began. Because Jimmy heard the wrong thing.
Andy Dice is a big guy.
Andy Dice was a monster.
Even though those guys like Craig James put up huge minor league numbers and never made it.
Yeah. So anyway, that was a Felske's direction. Either knock off this talk. Either go play him, beat him, or shut up. You know, he couldn't handle that stuff. So he's a good guy to be a man.
All right, so here's the minor league teams used to always have a trainer card in there. I don't know if this guy means anything to you at all.
Is that Kent?
But Kent Biggerstaff.
Kent Biggerstaff.
Can I tell you my favorite trainer story real quick? Just before I get to Kent?
Sure.
So the Royals had a trainer back in the day named Mickey Cobb. And Mickey Cobb had a limp to his walk. And Willie Wilson, I've talked to Willie about this. Willie was known for... He made great plays in the outfield, but I think if you look back at games, I always feel like he kind of would time his dives at the right time.
Right.
And he would often get hurt in center field, or he would be laying down in center field.
Right.
And then the fans start cheering, Willie, Willie, Willie. And poor Mickey Cobb would have to limp out to center field.
Right.
And inevitably, he would be 10 feet away from Willie after 20 minutes to get out there, and Willie would go, "I'm all right," and get back up, and the fans would give a big cheer, and poor Mickey Cobb would have to turn back around. And Willie told me that was kind of something that he had fun with as well. So I've got to think trainers, obviously they serve a great role, but minor league cards always had the trainer in there. I mean, if major league cards are bad, I think there's plenty of trainers out there that would love it. But tell me about old Mr. Kent.
Well, he was very, very serious. I mean, you know, you get these guys and they have dreams too, and that was his dream, was to go to the big leagues, and he wound up being in the big leagues. He may still be with the Pirates. I don't know. He was a big league trainer for a long time, but he did it right. And he didn't have much to work with as far as facilities and
some Band-Aids and some tape and some Tylenol, and you're good to go.
You know, if you appreciate what another guy does, which I think is a life lesson.
Absolutely.
You need to understand that you know, everybody has a dream, and Biggie's dream was to be in the big leagues, and he got there.
Yeah.
So.
This was your big arm. This is a 22-game winner in the minor leagues, Mark Bombach, who ended up playing in the big leagues. Was traded to the Mets after this year, but 22 wins in the minor leagues is a huge number, even in the big leagues.
Right.
Tell me about Mark.
Well, Bomber was you know, he had been around a long time when I first met him, and he threw a lot of strikes, and he would probably be along if you had a AAA version of a Mike Maddox type guy. He wasn't overpowering, but he had great control. Okay. It was kind of fun in center field watching him command the plate and watching all his pitches.
Ricky Buster Keaton played in the big leagues with the Brewers. Tell me about a little bit, Ricky.
Well, he had great stuff. A lot of these guys that sometimes probably were a little young and maybe didn't have quite the, you know, seasoning. But Ricky, every guy that goes to the big leagues has the stuff.
Right.
And Ricky did. Okay. So I don't really know what happened to him. He might have got hurt.
Yeah. Kansas State University, passed away a couple years ago. Andy Rapogli, did I say the name correctly? But he was an All-American at Kansas State and played the big leagues as well.
Very tough, very tough. I'd faced him when he was at K-State, and if K-State was going to beat us, they were going to do it with him. Okay. We might have beat him 2-1, something like that. I think. You know.
Yeah.
Very good pitcher.
Kind of a swing guy for you, Gus Quiros.
Yeah, Gus Quiros.
Yeah,
Quiros is how you say it. Yeah. Very, probably a lifetime minor leaguer. Always, give me the ball. I mean, the reason he stayed around a long time is it didn't matter when. He'd take the ball and give you everything. He was tough. Okay. Very tough.
Another future big leaguer, I think you maybe had gotten a cup of coffee at this point too, Randy Stein.
Yeah, Randy. They said Randy Stein had the nastiest slider in the game. And I remember we were playing Ed Farmer, Tony Muser, we were all in Ogden, Utah one night. And Ricky Henderson comes walking out. And he's popping off a little. Ricky was a little cool.
Ricky
was a little cool. And everybody, loved him. Ed Farmer loved him. And he's talking to Ed Farmer. He goes, hey, Eddie. And Farmio, who had been in the big leagues forever, says, they don't want to hear your story. He goes, as of last night, I was leading the league in hitting. And Farmio says, what did you say? He goes, as of last night, I was leading the league in hitting. And so that was all fine. Well, after that night, he wasn't, because Randy Stein struck him out 5 times. And I stood out in center field and watched him. And so the next day, Henderson comes walking out on the field, and Farmer goes, hey, Ricky, you still leading the league in hitting?
Yeah.
So it was one of those fun things. But Henderson, of course, when he hit a ground ball to you in the outfield, you just threw it to third. Because, just try and stop him, somewhere.
But absolutely.
Anyway, yeah.
Here's your card, and we're going to talk about that later, because you're also going to autograph that for me. There's old Billy right there. You played all 3 positions in the outfield at this point, I'm assuming? Okay.
Just depending on if there's one open.
There's a big prospect here that didn't make it, but Jeff Urich. Tell me about Jeff.
Jeff was could crush a baseball, but he and I love Jeff, but he was just so, only cared about his hitting, and he didn't care about anything else. And it probably, if I'd had his frame, if I'd had his status or size, I would have been very pleased, because he was a real specimen.
Okay, this is another guy towards the end of his professional career. Had quite a bit of the big league time, but Timmy Nordbrook. Do you remember Timmy much?
Yeah. Oh yeah, sure. Timmy was the guy that you put out there Game 7 if you needed somebody to come out and play short or third or second. Veteran, Baltimore Orioles, Tony Muser, all those guys.
Backup catcher Ron Jacobs.
Ron was from Texas, played at Texas, and solid, just solid, real good guy.
Okay. Sam Hines, the pitcher.
About 6'6", really had the stuff. I would have thought Sammy might have gone farther than he did.
I think he got hurt though, didn't he?
I think he got hurt. Yeah. He was real big.
Yeah.
A lot of times big pitchers have a hard time because they don't have anybody that can identify with them. They're like 6'6", or 6'8", 9, 10, whatever, and there's not anybody that can help them with their form. That's 6'6".
Right.
And Sammy was just big. Sometimes tall guys have a hard time.
That's it. Repeating mechanics for a tall.
Repeating mechanics.
Yeah. Knuckleball guy. Obviously was in the Big Red Machine, but Clay Carroll, the reliever, obviously towards the end of his career here too.
Yes, yeah. He was at the end of his career, just kind of hanging on, but the kind of guy with experience that if they needed somebody in a playoff game or in a run down the deal, you could bring Clay up and he could pitch for you.
So in today's game, when guys play the minor leagues, oftentimes if a big leaguer is coming through there on a rehab, they pick up a dinner, a really nice dinner for the entire team. Did that happen back when you played?
No, we didn't have a guy that had any money to do that.
Okay, all right. Money's a little bit different now.
The only one that could have, and I'll go on record here saying he never did, was Jamie Quirk. He had money.
Right.
He had a BMW. When he got to Spokane, he played third base for us, and he never took us all out to dinner, or at least I wasn't included.
Okay.
So
Jamie, if you're listening,
Jamie, if you're listening, you owe me dinner.
Yeah, this is an interesting guy to me because it's really hard to find a lot of information on him. I believe he was from Japan. He came over to play in the States, but Kuni Ogawa.
Ogawa.
Okay, was he from Japan?
He was a roommate of Sudaharu Oh.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. and he was hilarious. But he liked to sleep, and he actually slept through a playoff game.
Oh boy!
Yeah, one day, and that did not endear him to John Felske. He woke up at his house, and we were in the 7th inning of a playoff game, and I go, Cooney, why didn't you come to the game? He goes, I thought it was a night game. I'm going, well, you thought wrong on that one.
Oh,
so anyway,
boy.
yeah, Cooney was really hilarious, but
yeah, and his English was all right.
Not bad.
Okay.
But we were in Albuquerque one day taking batting practice, and you know, every ball was going out of Albuquerque. I mean, Pedro Guerrero and Socha and all those guys you talked about. And so he comes walking over to me because he didn't see anybody chasing the balls. And he looked at me and he goes, Billy, if I go get, can I keep? You know, he wanted to keep the balls going out of the park. And I said, Cooney, don't go chasing the balls today. Just take a couple and go hide.
All right, Willie Mueller.
Well, Willie pitched in the big leagues, I think.
Yes, he did.
I think he did.
Briefly. Yeah.
Briefly. Willie was your, I'll just say crazy. Willie is your guy that everybody loves Willie.
Rain delay specialist comedy show.
Yeah, you name it. And
nothing you can talk about.
Nothing you can talk about with Willie. But I don't know what he did in the big leagues, but he had the stuff, you know, just...
Didn't know where it was going.
Well, yeah, sometimes he did, but I don't know. He's just, you know, crazy. Right. He's crazy.
This is, you know, obviously the name became famous from a skater, but Danny Boitano, who did play in the big leagues as well. Tell me about Danny.
Danny was a really tough guy. He was probably your version of today of a closer, you know, that would come in, you know. I don't remember if he started. I think he was only a reliever.
Yeah.
He was the guy that you brought in, you know. And back then we didn't use the relievers like they do now. So he was sitting down there, you know, and if you got to the 8th or the 9th with the lead, you get the ball in.